Coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, Christmas is here, and it's the last holiday of the calendar year. But where does that word holiday come from? And is our Western culture maybe lost the plot on what that word actually means? Well, we're going to talk about it in this ball humbug edition. Keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
Make a new tradition. Stop doing Santa Claus. Knock it off.
Repent. Repent.
Yes, I'm quite proud of myself, if you can't tell.
Remember that this show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube, simply by searching for Mount Hermeneutics. What, you can't spell hermeneutics? Well, just use the words that on whatever platform you're listening to right now, or better yet, just subscribe and you won't have to spell it at all. And if it's your first time with us, I am Andre. That is Matt. That is Brian. Fellas, what's happening?
Hey, Dre. Hey, Matt.
Hey guys, how you doing?
It's Christmas time. We know.
It's not cold outside, so it doesn't feel like Christmas. But
well, I mean, it's super cold outside here. This morning it was 50 degrees.
It's about that now.
Yeah, so I have to put a hoodie on when I walk my dog.
You poor
thing. I have shorts, sneakers, and a hoodie. My bald head, sometimes I'm just more comfortable in a beanie, just regardless, right? But because there's a wind chill factor with the whole beach wind and the fog that sets in. It's super chilly.
I mean, it's not much colder here, so it's not really a point of contention right now.
I feel like you're gloating. Is that what this is
what?
about?
No, I'm freezing.
Right,
it's uncomfortable. In fact, my heater's on right now. And that's just because I have women that live in my house.
Look, Brian, all he has going for him in his geography is the weather and the beach. So he's got to pull it out whenever he can.
Is that all?
That's all, huh?
Just the most gorgeous climate in North America with some of the best beaches and best water to surf in. So yeah, I mean, if we could talk about taxes and
whoa,
yeah, exactly.
Why we have to?
Yeah,
and you have guns on your shirt, and I don't have guns anywhere near.
This is not local thing. This is in California. This is in Los Angeles.
Well, I mean, I like it. I love LA.
Back in the mid to late 1900s.
Whoa, you were born in the 1900s?
That was like another century.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah, what was the thing I saw that we're further from? Oh shoot, I forget what the new one was to make you feel really old, but it wasn't good. We're old.
I love those ones where they talk about actors
and how old they really were.
And how they were, and
Mr. Roper was like a whopping 43.
Yeah, I'm like, man. There's a recent one with like the Home Alone parents are only like 36.
That was the one. It was the mom. You're older than the mom from Home Alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the meme went on to say, like, now you can understand why she left a kid at home or whatever.
Could happen to anybody. Especially you have those badass kids, and
I guess life was harder back then.
I feel like adults didn't have hobbies back then.
So they just aged prematurely?
Yeah, because again, my only window into this world is television and movies, right? But middle-aged men in America, their only hobbies were bowling and going to the bar.
Right.
That's pretty much what dudes did after they, graduated high school. They joined a bowling league and they drank a lot of beer and nachos and they,
just let themselves go.
Yeah. And I think about, my dad also woke up at dumb o'clock in the morning like I do, except that my dad was filling up a Stanley thermos full of coffee and going to his blue collar job.
Right.
Where I get up and walk my dogs and then go to the gym. Right. I volunteer to get up this early so
Right.
that I can, be in some kind of shape when I go to my white collar job
Yeah.
and do well. It's kind of it's a purple collar maybe job. And I got
Color. Well, so my game is I get up about 6.5 minutes before my first conference call of the day, which is usually between 8:30 and 10.
I don't think I could do it because
Oh, it's glorious.
I need time to like clear my head. I got like
Nah.
mantras and
That's
stuff I gotta do.
that's maybe the carryover from the Marine Corps that I took with me. Is I just
Oh,
wake up
hurry
and,
up.
and I just stagger into my seat and I'm like, "Hey guys, how you doing? Hey, so on this project," and and my brain just turns right on. And Carrie will walk by and she's like, "How did you do that?" She's like, "You were literally in bed 6 minutes ago." I'm like, "I'm late. I gotta get on this call."
Takes me like a good hour to wake up.
That was my shtick at Fort Huachuca, man. Everyone knew me as the PFC Sunshine, but
Yep.
really, it was funny because when I had my first
Yeah,
roommate,
we all hated you.
Trevino was like, "Oh, you're full of shit," because he'd see me wake up and be like, "Ah," I'd shave or whatever, brush my teeth, and he would like watch the switch flip,
Right.
and he's like, "This
Yep.
you you're a liar."
Hey,
I'm like, "No, I just fake it till I make it, baby."
False
That's
motivation's better than no motivation.
That's right.
I've tried to explain that to people and they're like, "That doesn't make any sense." And I'm like, "Look, if literally everybody acted mopey, everybody would be mopey. But if
It's
one
transfer of
person
energy.
decides to be the sacrificial lamb and fake being happy, then eventually everybody else kind of has to come up a little bit to meet
Well,
them."
we're not acting, Matt. We really are mopey.
I think it's the second person, right? At least you ever see that that dude that's weird and starts dancing in this big crowd.
Mm-hmm.
He's weird. Everyone's like, this fucking guy, but it's the second person
Right.
that dances, and it's
Right.
like, and it validates
It
the weirdo,
normalizes the
and
behavior.
then everybody starts
Yep.
dancing.
And then
So you
everybody's
have
like, "Well,
false,
two dudes are doing it. Why we're kind of weird for not doing it now."
right? So you have false motivation. You just need the second guy
Yep.
to have a little bit of motivation, and
Yep.
and it's
You
it's
got to have a
viral.
suicide pact.
That's right. I mean, if I'm going to be out there getting up at dumb o'clock in the morning and running 6 miles, I may as well have some fun, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Mm.
I mean, you
And they used
shouldn't
to
do
try to
things and be
slay us.
miserable.
Oh, the champion just walked through the door. Fucking Cooper Biz. There's a funny scene in Landman because the kid's name is Cooper, and this lady's like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm Cooper," which is such a Cooper Bibbs answer for everything. Anytime you're, "I'm Cooper," like what? Who are you?
That's
Cooper.
hilarious.
so we laughed and
Yeah.
got a kick out of that.
That's good.
I need to catch up on that.
I need to start it, but we just powered through 1883 and then which fed like literally. So you guys have finished Yellowstone?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I just finished 1883 probably 3 days before the final Yellowstone. And the timing couldn't have been better because of the voiceover they did at the very end. And we were like, I'm so glad I watched 1883 because I wouldn't have understood how cool that little sequence was.
She needs more gigs. Isabella May
She did a really good job.
She's a pretty decent actress.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I loved her in Run, Hide, Fight.
Oh, is she in that? Okay. I didn't see that.
She's the heroine.
Okay.
And what I like about that movie is that she's not just a badass. She had luck and help, and she just had courage. Is what she had.
And she had a good father.
Right.
I was thinking about her as I was watching 1883 because, again, I'm like, this is how you do a female lead role. She doesn't have to be able to beat everybody up. She just has to have more in here. And, because all those Indians were like, she's more Indian than they are. They were like, she sounds like Cherokee or whatever they were.
On paper, Run, Hide, Fight is woke.
Right.
But it's really not.
But it's not at all. It's based.
Yeah.
Based as hell. Which is why the Daily Wire played it.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, no, I gotta get into Landman, but I think we'll have to be after the holiday season after we get through all the craziness we got going on in the house. The kids just got approved for their rental. So that'll be they get to move in on the 7th.
When's she due?
Late March. I think that's because I'm taunting her because if she ends up going a week late or long, which is normal for your first kid, she's going to bump into Austin's birthday. And she's like, no, it's coming before that.
She's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll see.
My daughter Aubrey's all grown up now. She's making pozole. Is that how you say it? Pozole? It's like a Hispanic soup. Anyway, she's hosting a party at her house for Christmas Eve, and we're all going to like 15 people to have a game night and at Aubrey's place.
Nice. Look at her.
And she's slipping into her final form that will be Delani one day. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
so it's fun. It's fun seeing these kids, all grown and whatnot.
Yeah. I went out to we went to Eufaula last night. Was that last night? Yeah, yesterday to see
Eufaula.
Carrie's family. Yeah. And the boys that are Alyssa's age, she has two cousins, and they've both got kids. One has two kids already. And the one was sitting on the couch, and he looked at me and he goes, sucks when Christmas isn't about you anymore. And he's like joking, but he's just kind of, talking about the coming of age thing. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
now you understand why Uncle Matt always looks so annoyed sitting on the couch at Christmas every year.
It is funny because I have the least amount of presents. I got the least amount of shit to open. I'm watching everybody.
Yep.
I'm enjoying myself. I don't
Sure.
actually care. But then it's funny because then, like when I got my hermeneutics shirt, Aubrey's like, "I got this for you," and I was like, "Whoa, shit! Dad's getting love. That's weird. Okay,
Yeah.
let me check it
Yeah.
out." So
Yeah, that's cool. So speaking of gifts and Christmas
right
and
now,
the holidays,
Yeah.
oy vey. Okay.
Is that your transition into
Yeah.
the show topic?
It was my attempt until you butchered it.
I know.
Oh.
I mean, Brian,
Well-
how long have we been doing this? Just roll with it. Like you. I don't understand.
It's okay. They can see the seams. They know we're making this up as we go. It's not a. It's
Oh,
okay.
boy.
We didn't ruin
Okay.
anything. But yeah. So I didn't have a lot. A deep dive on. Holiday is just a contraction of holy day, because that was kind of the only point that I was making about the the origin of the word. I didn't have like a deep dive into the etymology or anything, but
You had more than that in the chat. Like you're
I
lying.
honestly
Stop it.
never gave that any thought.
that holiday is a contraction of holy day.
I've
So
never
what's
never given it a second of thought.
What's a holy day supposed to be?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Ray. I kind of just, if we look to the Bible as a model, it was predominantly for children. In Exodus, when they talk about the Passover, this is a day you are to commemorate for the generations to come. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance. Obey these instructions as a lasting ordinance for you and your descendants. When you enter the land that the Lord will give you as he promised, observe this ceremony. And when your children ask you, what does this ceremony mean to you? Then tell them it is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. And there's kind of similar instructions in Leviticus when they talk about the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths, which is when they all build tents and camp out for a week to commemorate the time that their ancestors wandered the wilderness. And it's so your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And you kind of have that kind of idea repeated whenever they talk about their holy days. It's about kind of remembering their history. I mean, first and foremost, it's the day, the period is supposed to be set apart as holy, as sacred, and there's a level of solemnity to it. Although there's also celebration, there's drinking and feasting, but it's meant to kind of root their identity in this shared history, and kind of it's really about maintaining their community as God's covenant people. And so the year is kind of arranged according to these holy days, where they kind of put everything they just kind of shut everything else out, and they center themselves on what's sacred and what defines their identity as a community. And I just think, and that's the purpose is predominantly to teach children about this, and so that they'll teach their children, and so on and so forth. And it's just I think that's it's important to, as Christians, to kind of home in on that, and think about that as a model when we observe our own holy days, um, celebrating the birth of Jesus and the resurrection. And surprising no one, I'm somewhat critical of how we do holidays, in our culture. I don't really care what non-Christians do, but as Christians, our observances should be different than what everybody else is doing. I mean, Jesus, the birth of Jesus should not be incidental to our Christmas observances. But I didn't have much more to say besides that. But
I find it interesting that we call all of our holidays or holy days, right? So
Right.
starting with New Year, I guess that could be sacred, right? Um, Martin Luther King, followed by President's Day. So I mean, I guess a President's Day could be sacred to Americans, and that's why it's an American holiday. And the list goes on. So I never really thought like Labor Day, really that
Yeah.
commie day is sacred and set apart, and it's a
well,
holy day for Americans.
I think it just
Columbus
kind of
Day, hell yeah, let's do it.
yeah. I think the rest just kind of borrow the term
Yeah.
holiday. They're not. I mean,
Well,
they're
I get that,
yeah.
but my problem is like, should they have? And should it be borrowed? And should we actually think of these holidays a little bit different than we do?
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because like I said, I'd never given it a single thought. I mean, it makes perfect sense to say the word out loud and go, oh yeah, obviously it's two words pushed
Right.
together, right? Like it makes sense once you hear it. Um, I we just like Dre, like you said, we use it so freely. As Brian was talking, I did a little etymology lookup, and apparently the phrase "Happy Holidays" comes from the mid 19th century in Britain, and it referred to summer vacation. So that's where that term "Happy Holidays," like they'd be like, "Hey, Happy Holidays," because the kids are going to go off and have tons of time off.
Yeah, they
Um,
in the UK, holidays are just like a vacation. Like it's
right.
not.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
Um,
European thing broadly, right? I
yeah,
work with
Right, yeah, they say, "Hey, I'm
Europeans.
on holiday."
I'm going on holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which again, given the root of it, I was like, oh, word? You Eastern Orthodox or what are you doing? It's like you going on a pilgrimage? What are you doing? You
they,
going to
they should
Mecca?
have like
Like, I don't know.
they should have a British version of National Lampoon's Holiday.
Right. Yeah.
Holiday roll. Anyway,
But this also says that the Christmas greeting of Happy Holiday came up in 1937 from Camel cigarette ads. So it's very much a very Mad Men kind of, they just used the phrase in an ad for cigarettes and it stuck because people saw it so much in print or whatever.
yeah.
Um, so that's
so
interesting.
did the word go from like 7-10,000 years ago, then it's like skip and like, you know what? Jews said something right. Let's start advertising this. Let's
Yeah,
or was it
this
Jewish advertising that were in the booth doing their thing, right? And
right, a little Fifth Avenue uh, Jewish American action. This etymology that I'm looking at says it comes from circa 1200s. It doesn't say it goes back to biblical times. And then it gives a couple of roots of different words and that it actually shares meaning with the Sabbath. So obviously, if it means Sabbath, then it goes back to biblical times. But it's just it's something
huh.
I've never given a second of thought to. So it was interesting when you
So
brought it up, Brian, because I mean, obviously, we talked about this last year in our Christmas episode about Christmas needs should be handled differently, but all holidays should be handled differently, but the word should be handled differently. Like that's a crazy, slope to have fallen off of, that not only are the individual days not being given their proper attention or the proper treatment, but the word itself, because we're not treating it as the root of the words that it is, that could be the start the cause or the symptom, maybe one a little bit of both. It's kind of
Well,
interesting.
what's what's interesting as the three of us were kind of chatting about what this show is going to be, I got into it with a guy on Facebook, a Christian who was scandalized by this Christian rapper who was making the biblical case for the Second Amendment. And the guy didn't really have any arguments. He was against it. He just thought it was sacrilegious to, to this idea that if Jesus was around today, he'd be armed and would be going to the range to, with the fellas, and he used the word sacrilege to characterize that. And he didn't have any good arguments for it. It was just kind of like guns, ew. But he blamed our gun culture on school shootings. I mean, he blamed school shootings on our gun culture, and it was kind of right after that Abundant Life Christian school shooting,
Hmm.
where a 15-year-old student, girl student at the,
That's
which
the first, by the way.
yeah, other than the transgender at the other one,
Right.
but like her motivations were clear, where she was, mad at the transphobia. But
Hmm.
this one, it's totally inscrutable. Like nobody, there's a manifesto going around, but I haven't been able to. It hasn't been confirmed as hers, and I haven't seen any of the content of it. But it does, it- but it is. It doesn't really matter. It's interesting that she was going to a Christian school and had, apparently was so. Anyway, this guy blamed school shootings on our gun culture, and I pointed out, well, we don't have more guns now than we did, in the early to mid 20th century. It was, they had shooting clubs, they had extracurricular shooting clubs,
Hmm.
they had rifle ranges on campus, so
Hmm.
kids would bring their firearms to school.
I can remember as
Yeah,
a ninth grader in Oklahoma that seniors. I remember seeing seniors with trucks with shotguns in the back of their windows.
yeah. But it's something other than the number of, something other than gun ownership or gun culture has changed.
What what
It,
is what does gun culture mean?
it's just a sneer
Right.
for
So
people who
Well, I mean, I have an opinion of what gun culture means, and it's not what the media uses, right? Because in my circles, here physically, specifically, the gun culture is one that's actually much more respectful and
so
appropriate with
I
guns.
think that was going to be my point. I think where gun culture has changed is the respect factor,
Hmm.
the respect factor of humanity, the respect of each other, and the respect of the actual weapon that you're wielding. To understand what that thing is used for and what it can do and what the capabilities of that thing is and how much responsibility you have by simply wielding it. And
Well,
I think that we have so washed over responsibility in every facet of our life, then why not that, right? Um, to
I
me,
think
we
it's
we we
I think there's a little bit more, Dre. I think you're right, and there's not a but at the end of that. I think in addition to, and maybe as an overarching problem statement, is the idea of the sanctity of human life has come down, right? Because you're right, kids aren't taught to respect tools and guns and all of those kinds of things.
well, that's why I
But
said humanity first. That was my first
yeah, for
comment in
sure.
that.
Yeah, yeah, because you know, I taught my kids to respect guns, if for no other reason than to ensure that we didn't have negligent discharges in the house. Because I
Absolutely.
have guns laying around. There's not actually one in here right now, and I'm a little surprised. I usually have them, but of course we don't want to get demonetized.
Just kidding.
are we monetized?
That was my the joke.
Oh,
That,
I don't want to
gotcha,
get preemptively demonetized.
gotcha.
But be above and beyond that, I never had a concern with my kids becoming school shooters because I taught them to respect life and whether or not the gun was something that they would use as a weapon or a tool, right? So like there, I don't know, it's tough to accept that moniker of gun culture, the left
Well,
certainly thinks that we
when
fetishize guns.
yeah, and I think that's what when they say gun culture, they think that if you are pro Second Amendment, you're just, you're at home just edit that out. Edit that out. Upon reflection, that sounded way creepier than I meant it.
No,
But
I
yeah,
think it was spot on.
they
Because
they
I think the left does think that we do that.
they
Yeah.
have a caricatured view of
Right.
the place that guns
Mhm.
occupy in our hearts, and no, we just kind of recognize that a vital they're vital to a free republic.
And the people that run around shooting people, they don't really have a gun culture. They have a murder culture.
Right.
Yeah.
They have a mental
Their
health
culture is like,
culture.
you listen to any song about it, any person talk about it, even when they pull up, the words that come out of their mouth before they yank on that trigger, and I do mean yank because they don't squeeze, right? So, I mean, society has just no respect. Gun culture is the Rodney Dangerfield of our society now. He had no respect.
Well, but also, I mean, and the reason I brought that up, the reason that struck me as relevant was, it's, this, we've kind of lost any kind of sense of the sacred and the numinous and
The whatiness?
the numinous.
Is that like PNEU?
Yeah, I
No,
nodded my head like I knew what the fuck he was talking about, but
it's
I don't know.
Numinous. It's like a supernatural awe.
Okay.
Like the illustration C.S. Lewis uses is that, like, if there's a tiger in your kitchen, you're afraid of the tiger because of what it can do to you. But a numinous fear is like if there's a ghost in your kitchen, you're afraid of it for what it is.
Okay.
And so, and we're supposed to have that fear and awe toward the things of God, toward the person of Christ, and the purpose of these holy days, as we read about them in the Bible, that Christian holy days are supposed to be modeled after, is to kind of center ourselves in that fear of God and that numinous awe and reverence. But our holidays are just filled with frivolity, and
Right.
we think that's how it's supposed to be because that's just kind of how we do it. And I can't help but, like, that same sort of frivolity toward, this flippant regard toward the sacred. We kind of treat it as an afterthought to our holy day observations. I can't help but think there's a connection there to our, you know, a 15-year-old girl going to a private Christian school of all places doesn't have you know, the, the same, that she doesn't honor life as sacred. We're so nihilistic as a culture, and even at a private Christian school, they're not immune to this. I can't help but think there's a connection there.
So
Yeah.
are they? Are, so I'll ask: do they not value human life, or do they think that in order to obtain justice, some people have to die? Because those aren't the
Like the
same. That's
United
not the
Health
same thing,
like the
right?
United Health CEO situation.
Right. Or most of these, the end justifies the means, right? So if your goal is to rid society of these people who don't think properly because they're purely evil, is it okay to vanquish evil?
Right.
Who are we talking about?
I'm talking
Um,
about the people you were just mentioning,
like
like
this,
the
like
school shooter.
school
So
shooters, like,
is it the fact that she didn't believe in that life was sacred, or does she think that life is so sacred that evil has to be removed?
well, I mean, I don't know what her motivations were, but most school shooters, it's usually just like they've decided to just throw away their own lives along with everybody. They just kind of vent their hatred toward people, and it's not. I don't. Yeah, maybe they've worked it out in their head so that they're the tragic hero who's striking out at evil, but it's usually that's typically just all in their own head, though. But they're they don't even regard their own life to be sacred. Um,
Are you disregarding your life as sacred if you believe you're martyring yourself?
um, but I mean, martyring yourself to what though? Like, what is the great cause that they think is being served by this? It's
Well,
usually
to
just
me, I think that's the puzzle, right? I think to them, the great cause is something either in their head or they believe in some ideology, and we just can't really wrap our brains around what it is that they think is sacred. So
yeah. I mean, I suppose like I guess you're saying that it's not so much that they don't regard anything as sacred. It's misplaced sanctity.
yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
mean,
Like
and even
I'm
even if
thinking
it's
of
50% of it or some of it, or you know, and I'm not disregarding what you're saying, Brian. And I really wish my dog would stop. But
no,
so,
I think that's a valid point. I think that's like everybody worships something. Um,
sure,
and I'm thinking of, do you remember Elliot Rogers? I forget, he's the kid who he did like a 3 hour YouTube or 6 hour YouTube video where he's just kind of like complaining into the camera about how like no girls will have sex with him, and he's furious about this. He feels entitled to their affection, and they're giving their affection to these these low lives who are beneath him. And so he decides to take his revenge on them by just going and killing all these sorority girls and all of their big um it's you guys remember that guy? I
No,
don't want to go too much into his
no.
manifesto.
it sounds familiar, but I don't
But I
remember in my
think
life.
that's different from what Dre was asking about. That feels more like an adult having a temper tantrum.
Well,
Right.
he was like a late teens, early
Well,
20s or
he's
something.
he's in
But
college or whatever. But I'm saying a grown temper
right.
tantrum, not a 2-year-old. But I think
Well,
at least what I'm thinking of with the question that Dre asked is where you have these politically minded people that are like, hey, so and so is such a bad person. He's literally Hitler. He needs to be killed, right? And they're making this decision that my my opinion of the political state of the situation is so bad that it would be better if people died rather than continue to do the things they do because it's so abhorrent to society.
do you think that's most school shooters though?
No, I don't think it's school shooters. That's why I'm
Well, I
saying
mean
I think they're different. I think what
well
where
that's
Dre was going was more like that part of the world, and I think school shooters are more, well, it depends if we're talking about the kids. When kids are doing it, the FBI's been pretty consistent with their profile that the kids that go do school shootings are young boys that don't have leadership at home. They don't have a male role model, and they're overindulged and have disproportionate decision making for their age and their place in life. Like it's
And
that's a what?
SSRIs are always
Oh, okay,
almost
that's fair.
100%,
That's fair.
so
But
brain
that
altering
yeah, but that
chemicals.
FBI profile is really tight, which is why this
Right.
recent one is so different because it's a little girl.
yeah.
But all of those have been consistent. Every single one of them have checked all of those boxes. So I'm curious. I'll be interested, obviously in a very dark kind of morbid curiosity kind of way to see what the story is on this girl. Just
But if
Yeah.
society is kind of molding men and women, boys and girls into non-differentiating, will we see more
no,
young women
no,
do these things?
no, no, because I
All
don't
right.
care how much. I personally don't care how much society is non-differentiating. There's certain things that are coded into DNA, and
But
violence is
are there
coded
going
into
to be
boys.
more girls who buy into that?
No, no, but it doesn't matter if they buy into it. They're not going to act on it. Like they might have the instinct to be angry, but they're not going to have the wherewithal to carry it out. I mean, how many times do girls get into fistfights? It's so infrequent that it shows up on the internet every time it happens.
But it's growing.
Is it?
It is, yeah. I mean,
Is
It
it
is
growing?
it
growing.
is growing.
Yes.
I don't know that it's growing. Girls got in fistfights when I was a kid. It
Um,
wasn't common, but it's not common today anywhere. My point is, again, girl fights are so infrequent that they make the internet and everybody sees the same fight because it doesn't happen that often. It's not happening on a daily basis everywhere.
I'm not sure I agree with your data, but I think I agree with your point. Um,
Sure.
like the
Yeah.
the the
I
left
mean,
has the
it's anecdotal. I haven't done a
yeah,
study on it, but I'm just,
yeah the
using my shared experiences.
the left has this idea that everything is socially engineered.
Hmm.
Men are the men are the way we are because
Right.
society tells us
Because we're
that,
exposed to the color of
that
blue and it's a
right
dominant color. And
that
yeah.
you're not allowed to show your emotions and so we need to socially engineer men to be more like women to be more, but no, we're like this because that's just how we're wired, and you
Now,
can't.
I think, Dre, to answer your question a little more fairly, the effects might be somewhat of exist in existence simply because of breeding practices changing, right? So left women are choosing effeminate men as mates at a higher level than, in the olden days, right? Women wanted manly men back in the day, and now there's a whole host of liberal women that hold their nose and pick effeminate men as their husbands because that's what they're supposed to pick, right? And so they're
I
breeding with
think
these men. So there's a natural selection that's going on at a limited level within our culture. So I think that could have some kind of a swing to where, the windows might be moving and, power bands, bell curves might be adjusting and whatnot.
Hmm.
I
hmm.
mean, that's a whole nother conversation. I'd have to go do some
Well,
MJ level
but
research to bring some data to support it. But
this is relevant to my overall point, and I don't want it to make it sound like, hey, if Christians were more solemn about Christmas, school shootings wouldn't happen. Like I'm not making that direct leap, but it like there's a confusion of values. The values that people are getting are their worldview is broken and their values are broken, and it's and I do think that's connected to the church's increasing failure to convey the right values, even among ourselves. Um, like it's just the the way we're doing it isn't really working, and Christianity is dying in the West and our civilization with it, and school shootings are one of the symptoms of that. But
yeah, I mean, that's hard to argue that point. It's
Is it okay to have a frivolous time and party if you attend church on Christmas?
um
So you separate it, right? You understand what it's about because a lot of people don't go to church all year long, but they go to church on Christmas or whatever Christmas service for
mhm.
whatever denomination that they're doing. Um, so if you have some solemn moment before the party, before the
Before the
festivities
eggnog.
of what we call Christmas, and you truly in your heart go, you show up to church. And I know we've had an episode before where we talk about church attendance on certain days, and it's just it's a habit, it's a tradition to show up, not necessarily praising the way you're supposed to be praising. But
um
if you go to church, like, are you doing it wrong?
well, I mean, if it we I would go to church as a kid, but because Jesus is the reason for the season. That was the only time we would ever go to church, if we even went to church then. But it was really just an exercise in delayed gratification. We weren't
Okay, yeah.
we just weren't celebrating the birth of Jesus. We were going through the motions of this observation we inherited from our culture. We had fun, and I have fond memories of celebrating Christmas as a kid, but we simply weren't celebrating the birth of Christ. And I'm not here to, I don't, I'm not going to prescribe exactly what faithful Christians ought to
You're not
do
going
or
to
what,
issue a fatwa on
right.
Christmas celebrations.
But I think that we all can agree that, like, when you consider what a holy day is supposed to be by design, like, the fact that it is kind of such a chore to so many people to make it about
Yeah,
Jesus.
that's true.
I think that's something that bears examination and reflection.
I, I, I think it's an interesting question because, we, the problem I don't think is the acknowledgement of the reason for the season. Because to Brian's point, I think that's easy to just pay that lip service. I'm going to explain my answer by pulling the core of my pastor's sermon on Sunday. I thought it was really cool. If you guys will bear with me for a quick second, I would show the video, but I'm sure it would cause some kind of a trademark issue. So he played the snippet that we all know and love of the Linus speech from the Charlie Brown Christmas special, when Charlie Brown's frustrated about, does anybody know why the real meaning of Christmas? And then Linus walks out and says, I'll tell you, Charlie Brown, right? So I'm going to read the script because it's only like 10 lines. He says, sure, Charlie Brown, I can tell you what Christmas is all about. Lights, please. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were so afraid. And the angel said unto them, fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people, for unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men. Now, the interesting thing is the
Is it
very
their
next
10-year-old
line.
kids saying
No,
shit
the
and without
very
their
next
parents?
line is in brackets, and it's stage commands, and it says Linus picks up his blanket and shuffles off stage. So the thing that my pastor said, he goes, all of you, we're all older, the oldest, we've watched this every year. He goes, Charles Schulz wrote the Peanut cartoon for like 55 years or something, every day, right? Monday through Friday, and then also on Sunday. In every comic that Linus was in, what do we know about Linus? He was always holding his security blanket. In that scene, when Linus says, fear not, he drops his blanket.
Hmm.
And then he gives that entire speech with no blanket in his hand. And then he picks it up and walks off the stage. And apparently in some interview, Charles Schulz explained that the point is not just that Christ was born, but he was this light of hope and peace. And it was the promise of something that was more important. And that Linus, this child that needed a security blanket, didn't need it in the presence of God.
Hmm.
And it was the coolest Christmas sermon that I've ever heard, because it was, somewhat pop culture oriented, but it was this like super hardcore point. And the reason I brought that up, one, I wanted to give my pastor, credit for a really cool sermon. But
That is
something that
pretty
I've
cool. I never
yeah,
caught
go
that.
watch the video after when we cut, right, and
You
you'll
know, it's
see him
funny.
drop it.
My 18-month-old granddaughter is obsessed with Peanuts.
Really,
Like I'm like, where did that come from?
that's cool.
She will watch Snoopy. She went to Knott's Berry Farm and hugged
There you
on
go.
Snoopy,
That's
and
what's up.
she like any Charlie Brown that pops on, she's like, puppy, puppy. So it's like it's super cool. In fact, she picked up some wadded up shirt off her floor this morning to show me, puppy. Like
That's
that's
funny.
great. So I have like a renewed
Yeah,
love for Peanuts
right.
through the eyes of the 18-month-old
Yeah,
little girl. So it's kind of fun. So, and I'm sure we will watch.
yeah. So now when you watch it, you're gonna be
Yeah,
like,
I'm gonna kick some knowledge and like. So I don't know if you guys noticed this or not.
Dre's gonna pause.
Yes.
So
Did
I don't know
you
if
see
y'all
what
know
happened
this or
there?
not.
Yeah.
But my point in telling that story is that just saying, yeah, it's the birthday of Jesus, it really falls short of the point and the magnanimity of the event, right? Like
Yeah.
it was the singular most important moment in the history of mankind. Um, and that's the part that I think we don't really speak about, because like you make it a birthday party. We have birthday parties for our kids, right? We get together and have a good time, and the adults are at the adult table having a little beverage, and there's a pinata or whatever, and the kids are having, everybody has a good time, and then everybody leaves, and no one questions, were we really celebrating the kid's birthday? Well, of course we were, right?
Right.
That's why we were having a good time. But it's a matter of what
Well,
is it that we're
but
orienting ourselves towards that's relevant to the day and the event, right? Like to me, that's the point of, is it okay to have a party and have a good time? And so, Dre, to answer your question, I think it is. I
well,
don't I don't
and
know
it,
that I don't know
it
that God. I'm almost done, Brian. Let me just finish my thought. I don't know that we live in a world where today, right? I don't think God has an expectation of us acting the way that we acted in the 2000 BC era or whatever, right? We're different people, but I think there is an expectation that we are at least aware of what the event is that we're supposedly celebrating. And I think that would go a long way towards it. Sorry, Brian, what were you going to say?
well, I mean, I think I see what you're saying, but I got to disagree. I don't think
That's
people are
fine.
different at all, but I think they were a lot more like us than we might think. Like, when you read about, we usually gloss this stuff over if you read the Old Testament, but the books of Chronicles have like chapters full of nothing but names of people who did like the worship service at the temple.
Mm-hmm.
Like the temple was like a rock concert.
Mm-hmm.
The Psalms are the song book, but they had like harp players and lyrists and percussions and I mean it was like a full orchestra with singers, and it was a full-on musical production. And also when you read about, I think it's in Deuteronomy 14 where it talks about going to the one place of worship that the Lord your God will choose once you enter into the promised land. If it's if the one place of worship is too far from your home, so that you can't carry livestock there for sacrifice, you can sell your livestock in your town, for silver, or coin. Take that with you, and then use that to buy wine or strong drink or whatever you want, to celebrate. So it is supposed to be a celebration. There's alcoholic drinking. It is a party.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not supposed, like, my point here isn't that, Christians need to be all somber and buttoned
Chast
up,
and yeah.
and no, you should party. You should celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, but it should be a celebration of that. But we kind of like, and it's,
I think we said the same thing then, because that's what I'm saying. I mean,
yeah,
if we were chanting Emmanuel and you know glory to God in the Most High and having just the same celebration, I think it would be perfectly fine.
yeah. But
My
but I
point
think,
is going, hey everybody, Jesus is the reason for the season, and then go back to doing whatever you
yeah.
were doing. I think that falls flat. That was my point.
Right. And yeah,
Shots,
and
shots.
Right.
I agree with that. And I think a lot of people, they hear what I'm saying, they're like, yeah, yeah, we do that. We have a Bible reading before dad comes in dressed in the costume, and then they reiterate their prayers and sacrificial offerings to Odin to get their present. Wh- which is essentially what it is. But but no, it's
Your mom likes Yuletide.
um yeah, I think
I think because not much all inspires us anymore. There's nothing heavy anymore, right? Remember being a little kid, Matt, you watched Michael Jordan jump from the free throw line and you're like, what? Mind blown. The slam dunk contest every year was something you look forward to
Mm-hmm.
seeing. Now I don't care to watch it because
Right.
there's nothing they're going to show me that I haven't seen
Right.
before. There's nothing awe-inspiring about anything that's going on. I think we've in this society where we become farmers, right? Like we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. And we don't have the same gravity of anything because anything that was great we've either seen it, right? We don't hear the old tales of uh pick your sport or movie, and the old man passing it down because they saw a play, like I saw this performance by
Mm-hmm.
this actor, it was incredible.
How
Well,
about
now I could just go on YouTube and watch the performance and be like, I disagree with you, old man, this sucked.
how about
Like
I'm driving to get food And Carrie texts me a screenshot that apparently uh, Santa Cruz like fell into the ocean and is floating around. And I'm like, is this real? I'm on the phone with my brother, and he gets like, yeah, dude, I just looked it up. He's like, that's freaking crazy. And then we're like, so anyway, we just went back to whatever we were doing.
Right?
Like the pier fell off into the ocean. There are people on it. It's floating away, and it's like,
Yeah,
and he made a comment. He's like, those damn vampires, and I was like,
I,
Lost Boys, and that was in
Right,
Santa
The
Cruz.
murder
And,
capital of the world. Yeah.
yeah,
I I think that, I mean, the last few years we've seen declassified videos of aliens. Nobody cares.
everybody's like,
How like, did you see that hellfire hit that
I,
thing and
I
just
am-
barely
I am-
knock it off course? Nobody's struck by awe on that. Nobody. Why? Because we got a microwave. We can cook food.
because we have a microwave.
Right?
So
Because
you're-
before you had to like heat a stove and you had to put enough bricks in that motherfucker with enough
Well, like
wood.
Brian said, we had school shootings because of Santa Claus.
Right. I mean,
That's what you said. That's the tagline.
let's
School shootings directly linked to Santa Claus. Brian
let's
Irvin.
take school shootings. I mean, as a point of fact, remember Columbine?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a big
That
deal
was-
forever.
That was an event,
yeah,
right? And people will tell you where they were when they heard about
yeah.
it. This last thing, I didn't even know about it.
How about
Until
Space Shuttle
somebody-
Columbia,
Right.
or before us, Kennedy.
Apollo, and I mean, our president got shot in the ear,
And nobody cared.
2 weeks later.
Does his
it was-
bandage
it
need to
could-
be that big?
it was- Hey, did you do it on purpose to try to get
Right.
more? I'm like,
Right?
what?
Seems kind of convenient.
I want to when I heard that, I wanted to do violence. I wanted to do some violence.
I'm in awe at the lack of awe
That is becoming a thing.
at many. Like I see something like, wow, that is amazing. I mean, you see a dude hit a ball 450 feet, like that's incredible. But so,
Yeah,
people have
yeah.
done it so many
The
times.
feloniousness of the strength that it takes to hit a ball that far.
I think that our entire humanity has done that across the board, including Jesus. And maybe it's because we've just elevated ourselves so high that
Well-
we're running around. And it's because if you ask anybody what's the Christmas spirit, the Christmas spirit is being kind to people.
Mhm,
The Christmas spirit is enjoying time with your family,
mhm.
talking about the things that truly matter to you. And you haven't seen your aunt in forever, but you're gonna hope that she makes that one casserole when you go over to her house, right? Just all these things where your family becomes central to what the Christmas spirit is. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, other than the fact that that's the wrong way to think of it.
I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's wrong.
I'm saying it's cool that you do that. I'm just saying that needs to be secondary
Yeah.
to what this thing really
Yeah.
is.
Well,
And when you said it's the single greatest event in human history,
I wasn't saying that to be,
right? Like
bodacious.
the gravity of that,
Yeah,
And
and
we-
I think
and
I
we're
think,
just like, oh yeah, it's pretty cool.
yeah, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding there that we have to kind of like talk people into realizing why that's important. Like it seems like such a chore that to make it about that.
I have an idea. I have a thought on
Okay.
this.
Well-
Maybe it's because it's been around for so long.
And
So-
that was kind of my point on
so-
all that diatribe. I was
Yeah, because
familiarity breeds contempt.
yeah, because if it had just happened, people probably couldn't shut up about it back then.
or
The people
maybe
were like,
completely-
"Oh, here he comes, the
Or-
apostle. I was
or-
there. I saw Jesus."
super skeptical, right? Like that
Right.
that shit didn't happen, right? I
Right.
mean, we could have something great among us right now, and somebody could tell you, "Hey, like no shit, I'm an angel." Like,
So
sure you are.
Say the line, "Be not afraid." Ooh.
the, kind of the supreme irony here, when I get a lot of pushback from people who, insist on this saying, well, I have to make it fun for the kids. Um, we're tacitly telling them that, well, Jesus isn't enough. Jesus is
Right.
boring.
That's
The
exactly.
the irony is like all the action figures and video games and merchandise and stuff that they're getting under the tree that Santa's bringing them, based on franchises like Harry Potter or Star Wars or Superman or Lord of the Rings or so on. They're all like in some way or another adaptations of his story. Like they're
Yeah. I mean, except
like
Superman, but I get where you're going.
I have this back here. Dre will recognize that. That's within the Christ allegory. That's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I,
within the Christ allegory of
Has that always
transform.
been back there?
Yeah, within the Christ
The crystal
allegory.
has?
mhm.
I got it like a few months ago.
Oh,
This has
I'm
always
like,
been back here.
right.
That's the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Spirit and the Bible within the allegory of Transformers. But all of our pop culture, makes such liberal use of these things, but we
What
treat
verse
them
is
as
it when
boring.
Jesus says, transform and roll out?
but it's also like, at the same time, you don't want to, the absurdity of, man, this is hard. You know what else was hard? Fighting Nazis. That grandpa that always does that, because, hey kids, you know what's great about today? You don't have to burn in eternal flames because of the Lord Jesus Christ. Like that kind of conversation would also be weird, right? And so like the challenge
You
is,
know how
and
lucky
I
you are
know
to
this
live
is
in.
what you're saying, by the way, Brian, is the challenge is we need to create a culture where the reality and the awesomeness of the resurrection of the Christ is part of our daily conversation, and not in a way that it waters it down, right? Like Dre and I can bring up Bo Jackson 100 times and we never don't go, oh man, that dude, but how often do people go, so, Jesus, and then people go, oh, our savior, like, I'm so glad he came and died for us. We don't do that. We just don't react that way as people.
Yet we keep going back to that well for our stories and
Right.
our entertainment, and especially that, for children. Um, so it shouldn't be that hard. Um, but and if somebody had explained these things to me as a kid, like I didn't know Superman was a Christ allegory when I was a little kid, but I love Superman and Transformers, and these things were kind of like training wheels for Christianity, though. When I became a Christian and I'm reading the Bible, and like I reading the Gospel of John, like I hear that being narrated by Marlon Brando because of that
Mm,
that
I
that
get that.
Superman,
Yeah.
um, because of what he
Yeah.
told Kal-El putting him on the ship, because all of those themes are there. But it's I think that when we treat it like a chore and we act like it's something that I, I think that's something that we should kind of reflect on and consider why what is the disconnect that, like, every all of our pop culture keeps drawing on this, but we can't seem to find the interest in it ourselves. And I think I think that's an area that where
Yeah. I think you're right.
people have room to grow and learn more, and there's something to tap into there.
Yeah, I think you're right. So let's do this. Let's do something different for a change. Let's leave our listeners with a challenge, with a goal, with a task,
Homework.
right? Anybody who's listening, what can you do? What should what to the I made the joke about Brian issuing a fatwa. you shouldn't rely on a pastor or a podcaster or some freaking guy because you were in the Marine Corps together to tell you what's right and wrong. Like Dre was asking provoking questions, thought provoking questions. But the reality is, when we talk about these things, it kind of comes across as kind of self-evident by the time we get to the end of it, right? By the time we fix it, or we answer the problem.
We solve it.
We
solve
solved
it.
Christmas.
Right.
But by the time
John?
we solve the
solved it.
Christmas problem, like we haven't solved the Christmas problem, we've identified the Christmas problem. But this is a serious problem. And it's not about Santa Claus. It is, but it isn't. And you guys all know what I mean by now. But to the listeners, like, I'd love to hear your feedback on, how can we address this within our society, with our families, within our culture in a way that's useful? Because I really don't think being that annoying actually guy is going to be useful, because that's just going to turn people off. But, we talked about the birthday party and
I
using
feel
that.
attacked.
Well, no, I was talking about anybody in general. I wasn't
I'm just
attacking
kidding.
you. I mean, but no. Like, we're talking about going to a birthday party and celebrating. And, even if it's your kid's birthday, your grandkids, whatever, at some point you're sitting there at the party and you're like, this family's kind of cool and it's all because of this. And that's why you have kids. And you kind of float in and out of introspection versus being in the moment and doing that. And that's my question is, do we do that with Christmas? Because I don't think we do. I try to force myself into that place, try to have those conversations, but I end up just falling into the same routine as everybody else, right? Like, let's sing Christmas carols, let's have some eggnog, let's, eat the traditional foods, let's go to grandma's house. Like, and none of that, like, we pray over the food and the prayer is a little extra for Christmas, but like, how often, I like the way you said it, Brian, about it shouldn't be a chore. We should be weaving this into our daily hygiene in a way that it feels normal and it feels meaningful.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. That just, as you were talking, it made me
Way
think
to
of that.
give the listeners the answer, Brian.
Well, I don't think that's.
I don't either.
I think that needs to be kind of translated to
what it means for you and how do you weaponize that in a way that's
weaponize it. Yeah.
useful.
But yeah, how do you?
It's
how
the
do you
gun
apply
culture in me.
that?
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
I think a lot of it has to do with integrating Christianity into your worldview.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I was trying to say with those specific words, is making it something that's just part of what you do, kind of who you are.
And if it's something that's happening on August 4th and you're doing it, then December 25th shouldn't be a chore, right? Like, so it's, you do anything, for 21 straight days, it becomes a habit. That's what they say, right? Yeah. So basically, if you just do the whole, hey, I made my bed today, and if you incorporate other things, you can just add on. I said a prayer today. I read a verse today. What else can you do? And can you imprint that thing on your heart? And sometimes it takes significant emotional events, right? Like I had a massive stroke, and then everything got a little bit different to me. The grass was greener, the sky was bluer. As I was commuting to work, I noticed, stuff in the mountains that I didn't see before. Everything became a lot more granular.
The ground's more uneven.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on? And I just think that if I thought more about our Savior, then I can compare that. But to me, like, everything is him. So by me saying the sky is bluer, that is actually me praising the Lord.
And I can certainly buy that. And I don't mean for you, I mean in general, right? For a person.
Of course.
And if that is how you do that, then that's cool, right? Like, that's the idea of praise music, is that
share it with me. Let us know.
Right. But I guess my thing is, Like I hear the cop out with a lot of my hunting buddies. I'd rather be sitting out in nature hunting, thinking about God and his beauty rather than sitting in church thinking about hunting. And I'm like, stop it. That's some cop
Well,
out.
then why are you thinking about hunting?
Exactly. Like
Like,
if
wait,
like you should be in church thinking about God and you should be out hunting thinking about God, but you're not. You're out
right.
hunting going, God made a cool planet. Oh, look at that deer. Right? Like you're not
Yeah.
thinking of
Right.
you're not
First,
tying this back
first of all,
to
it's one thing to lie to me, homie. Just don't lie to yourself.
exactly. Yeah.
But I think in your hunting buddy's defense, I'm trying to, how do I word this without,
Look at Brian coming to the defense of people not going to church.
Because he doesn't go to church.
I actually have been going to church.
Nice. Nice.
I actually signed up for a 11 straight day, like intensive, like it's called Life Transformation School. I figure
Nice.
that's a pretty good way to
Look at you.
to
I'm proud
get
of
to
you.
know the church people. They'll probably kick me out, but
Well,
but to be
especially if you
honest,
keep that attitude.
But yes, I mean, if you don't get kicked out, were you really praising right?
but to be honest, I rarely do I feel farther from God than when I am in church. Because I like what I'm, the whole Christmas thing. It's kind of a symptom of the broader kind of loss of the plot. Like the point of church is to advance God's kingdom on earth.
Mhm.
And like I don't feel like the same kind of disconnect we have with like how do why is it such a chore to make Christmas about Jesus? I kind of feel like we have that same disconnect in church. So I don't like I think the person who says, well, being out hunting, that's my church. Well, you're kind of missing the point. The church is not a building, it's the people.
Right.
But the people have to be they have to have a commonality of mission and purpose.
Right. Now,
that I
if you
don't-
and all of your hunting buddies are Christians and you're having a little, like the three of us would naturally do if we were out hunting, like that's very different. But I just don't buy it as a high level. To me, it's a cop out to give guys an excuse to choose out of church during deer season.
I agree that it's a cop out, but I understand why.
Sure.
Like,
No, I get where it's coming from.
I'd rather be on my couch watching football, thinking about God than beer.
Cursing God.
So, hey, with that, hey, let us know. So, Matt's question is valid. Go ahead and leave a comment or send us the ways that you get in touch with us on the things that you do to center you on Christ during Christmas. And with that, I think I'm going to say, stay enlightened, stay curious, and we will see you next week. God bless.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Bah humbug.